your screen.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm Min. I'm working in Coalition of the Willing, specifically the iShare system. I think our program manager, who is the Mike from Crew, he shared this initiative time ago. I don't know when, but so maybe some of you may be familiar with this initiative, but just in case, I would like to briefly explain about Coalition Willing and iShare, and then what's the needs that we need help from GIS community. So Coalition of Willing is a network of church planting mission agencies. So you see these 8 mission agencies, but it's growing very fast. We now have the bigger network of church planters. So these church planters definitely wants to plant the church in the countries they're serving. But Coalition Willing is actually targeting to plant a church in each village. So then the question is, what is village, right? So they come up with some idea, and they start working with the iShare system. So the iShare system provides a way to define villages in each country. And then the Coalition of Willing, the field people, plan to use, by using these the villages in iShare concept, they start to plan how to send their missionaries to each villages and how they track of where the church is newly planted. So here is the one example. You see the map in here. The polygon, I don't know if it is big enough, but this is bigger map on the right hand side, and it's a small polygon represent villages. So we created these villages by using public data like geo names and geo boundaries, plus publicly available population data. But none of these has the village level polygons. So we have to create this thing. So we are using population density data, and then we start to, we are using the geo names and geo boundaries data. We create this small village polygon related with the population size and the locations. And you see that here's many red polygons and yellow polygons and green polygons. So here in the left-hand side, you see kind of bigger picture of this. So what it means is green polygon means there's a church. Yellow polygon means there is a group of Christians, but there is no church yet. And the red polygon is we send out the surveyor on this place. We identify that this village doesn't have a church yet. And white places, there is no data yet. So the goal of the Coalition of Willing is basically turn this red polygon to green. So for this, they first make a plan, working with the local churches in each country or the other church planting mission agencies, missionaries, and then they plan how, when and where they send their missionaries. Or for local churches, they send their people to build a church in these polygons. So on the right-hand side, this specific map is from the Nepal. This is great example. So how they know these red polygons doesn't have a church because they send a surveyor in these villages, and they actually investigated whether there is a church or not. And this information becomes very valuable for other church planters and local churches, that they now know that this location, specific location, doesn't have a church. Then each church planter in a meeting, they strategize how they actually send out people and turn these red villages into green. So this is all about the coalitional building initiative and how iShare systems help their plannings and their mission. So definitely the GIS data plays a very important role in this initiative. So basically, iShare system, to serve coalitional building, we need all the village level polygon for all the countries. We developed last 1.5 years, automated this process. So we use the publicly available data source like geonames and geoboundaries and population data. And when we put those data into our process, then it will create these polygon layers. By the way, do you hear me? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then so after that, when we creating these layers, when we actually analyzing what we created, we start to see some issues. I think that's very natural that automated process cannot produce perfect village level polygons layer because each country has different problems, but also source data, because it's pretty much open source, also has a data issue. So we need to update, once we're creating these village polygons out of open source data, we need to review and update this polygon so that we solve these kind of issues. We are talking about 250 countries. So definitely we need more people having GIS skills plus regional knowledges. So we closely working with field people. Also, we are building up a network field people, but the field people, they know their countries, but they do not have enough knowledge in GIS. So that's why it's a bit hard to use their feedback from the field to updating the village polygons. So we need someone like you who has GIS skills, but also who has interest improving data and systems in mission. Okay, so do you have any questions so far?
I have a couple questions. Yes. What languages are these folks talking in? And I noticed that on your map you had a lot of null data, so all the white areas, and you're trying to get you're trying to do a lot of things right at one time. What is the biggest thing that you want to get done now? You want to get those churches in there, or are you looking for more data?
So the church, I mean, you're talking about church data, right?
Well, that's what I'm just trying to find out. What do you need? What is your immediate need?
Oh, yes, right. So immediate need is we started creating these village polygons, but those have an issues. So with these village polygons, definitely these polygons are imaginary. There is no real boundary concept, official boundaries, but we want it to be realistic representation of the villages. That's why we consider the size of the polygon related with the population size. Also, relatively accurate on at least the center point of the village polygon is actually the center point of the villages, right? Then it needs some metadata. One of important metadata is the local name, because these so how this village data is used is the field people actually print out the list of the villages where they want to survey or they want to serve. Then after you collect the data, for example, they identified the churches in this location, they have to report their location into the system so that other people and also the leadership needs to knows that, oh, there is a new church built. How do they report it? That's when they use the local names, right? So there is one challenge is actually we have English names, but English names means nothing to local people, right? I came from South Korea, and when I look at English names on certain places in Korea, it doesn't make sense to me, right? I have no idea why people call it that way, and it's hard to pronounce it, and the pronunciation is a bit different. So we need a good way to put this metadata, local names and populations, but also when you're processing lots of polygons, for example, India has more than, I believe, 300,000 polygons. And then it starts to have some weird things. It does, the algorithm creating cannot process it. So some country called certain area metropolitan, some will be the municipal, and they are tagged in different ways. So the algorithm cannot catch all the proper level of the source data and then creating it, because you need to have some knowledge to know, for example, in this country, when someone called municipal, it's the same level with the city, right? Otherwise, you cannot put in the same level, the layers, right? So these kind of the things, the challenges. So the immediate challenge is we start to producing each country's layers. Each country has 3 or 4 layers mostly: state level, district level, block level, and village level. If you have a 4, and someone needs to review, and then if there is an issue, they have to fix the things in the GIS data. So also we have 2 different issues. One is the technical issue. In technical issue, what I mean is we do not know really each polygon represent well the administrative boundaries of the countries. But it has a technical issue that, okay, so these villages say that it belongs to this block or this district. But the data actually misaligned. Some of the villages actually outside of the district boundaries, then it's hard to be used because the field people need to, when they work on the field, they actually say they want to send, or this church wants to serve this district, right? So we need to have well representation of villages also aligned with its parent admin level. So we have the kind of issues still. So there's the technical issues we have to solve. And the second issue we don't touch yet, but in future what we want to touch is actually the quality of the data. Does it really well represent villages? Does it really represent well the block of the countries? Something like that. Okay, I think it was kind of longer explanation to your question, but I think the immediate need we need someone's help, your helps, that the fixing our GIS data created from the automated process. And yeah.
I think Mark was first to ask a question.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Min, for the presentation. And it's very interesting work. You're right. We did have a presentation from iShare. I think it was 2 years ago. Maybe it was last year, but we do have that recording that people can go back and look at if they want more background. I think it's very interesting that you've automated this process. I understand probably because of resources you've had to do that. And you indicated that that means you have to make some compromises on quality. It sounds like you said you've gotten the data from open source, the geonames, the geoboundaries, the population data from open sources, and you've automated it. I'm wondering now, as you go and make changes, as you have these surveyors go out there and you find changes, what you're thinking is, because you have an automated process to build the data, but now you have to maintain it. If you want to refresh that data automatically, how are you going to save the changes, the work that your field people have done?
Right. So to clarify one point before explaining it, the field people here means they are church planters, right? So they are not necessarily collecting about GIS data, but definitely they're gonna say us that this village does not exist, or this village has, well, there's more villages in this area, right? We haven't done anything yet. How we gonna use this feedback and improving our current process? This is actually big first iteration of our GIS data initiative. In future, we are planning to do. So we haven't done it yet. We're gonna build kind of process how we actually using feedback and then improving it. Still we have a rough idea how to do. So when we get better data, what we actually doing now is we submit our updated data into geonames and geoboundaries. So when they accept it, we run the process again from geonames and geoboundaries. So we actually, this part is we evaluating whether it's effective or not. In future, we may decide that we actually keep the source data, maintain it ourselves, and then creating, by using the automated process, we're creating the village polygons out of it. So only difference is at the moment we first submit to the open source project our updated data, and then we inject those data from them. So difference is we need to wait until they accept it and do. And it was okay before, but now we are very close to the deadline, so we don't have time to wait until they accept and then we process again. So in that case, we just using it, but we still want to benefit the public open source community with our data. So we're gonna we consider to submit our data to GeoNames and GeoBoundaries. I forgot the second part of your question, but I think, does it answer to your question?
Yeah, I think so. So the sources, the GeoNames and GeoBoundaries and the population data, you said it's coming from open sources. Is it multiple sources or do you have a global source for that?
We got GeoNames and GeoBoundaries are the major one we use, and population density data we acquire from different sources. Actually, at the moment, the global village process belongs to other team. So I do not know very detailed about the technical aspect yet. But the GeoNames and GeoBoundaries are mostly be used.
Is that from OpenStreetMap or some other source?
Oh, GeoNames and GeoBoundaries are the initiative. So you can search GeoNames and GeoBoundaries. Those are
It's the
actually
U.S. Board of Geographic Names. That's the source of that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I'll yield the floor to Vincent.
Yeah. So I had a few questions because I was not sure if I understood it all. Because the data, are you looking? Because you are saying the data itself is not contains errors. Is it on a geometrical level, or is it mainly the attributes and attribute values?
You mean, okay, let me clarify if I understood correctly. Yeah. So you mean at the moment we are collecting the polygon, polygon data plus metadata. That's what you're asking?
Yeah. And my reason for asking is because I remember a post in I think our mailing list, which I think was from the Coalition of the Willing, and the post was about you were having topology errors in the geometries. Is that still the case, or is that problem solved?
That's still the issue.
Okay.
Well, okay, so the difficult part of this project is, as I said, each country has very different issues, right? That's why one automated process cannot process well for all the countries. So for some country, usually the smaller countries, we have better result. But even smaller country, but if you have very specific geographic features, for example, Azerbaijan, their country's boundaries are two separate big polygons, because one is autonomous region. It's not connected with the mainland of Azerbaijan, something like that. Then those kind of country-specific issues causes minor things in our process, right? But also I see that some source data has an issue. We getting the data from GeoNames and GeoBoundaries, population data, but those also has invalid information, right? So
sorry to interrupt, but another question could be, why do you need the boundaries from GeoNames or GeoBoundaries? Or could if you, for instance, would use GeoBoundaries, translate it to a center point, and then create a fishnet structure, probably that might solve your issue already. So why do you need real boundaries or existing boundaries, and why not create an artificial boundary set?
Okay, so the lowest level we call village polygon is different from upper level. Upper level, we respect the country's administrative boundaries. Mm-hmm. And as you know, administrative boundaries needed for field people, because you need to know where you're going, and they're familiar with their region and their official name. Village polygon is the imaginary boundaries we created. So mm-hmm. There is no village boundary polygon in most countries, right? No. So we created from basically the point data with the population number, and we reasonably expanded until we meet the upper level boundaries and other neighboring village polygon we're creating. It doesn't need to be accurate, because there's no accurate boundaries. It just needs to be well representative of the villages with a reasonable size. And this helps the visualization. So because then people know that which area is more church needed, and which area there are plenty church. Yeah. So the village polygon is for the visualizations and planning. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. I will pass it on to Michael.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a few questions, but I think probably I should just ask one. I am very curious about, let's see, where was my question here? Well, I was just thinking, maybe this is more of a statement than a question. The folks that are going to have the most ability, or the best ability, obviously, to edit these polygons for villages are your church planters or your surveyors, whatever you're calling them. So are you providing them with a tool instead of just a paper map, but with maybe some kind of an edge computing application that would allow them to do editing? Now, I know that's a little bit of sophistication, but I think that if you make an application that is basic, most anyone can learn how to edit a polygon that eventually could be then rechecked in an office by a GIS professional. You know what I'm saying? So are you planning on doing something like that in the field?
At the moment, we don't have plan to do. So our field people are mostly the church planter. Right. I used to be missionary in YWAM, and when you work at the church planter, these people wants to go out and do activities, but they are not good at sitting down and doing things on the technology. So I think the field people is not right audience to ask them to help on the GIS data. And the other challenge is we want it to be fast. We want to create these village polygons in the fast pace. And we are talking about 250 countries. And if we go one by one, heavily rely on the manual process, I think it's a bit hard to manage, plus it's a bit hard to make the progress. So that's why we have to, we need to balance between what actually we can do, plus, accurately, plus just how fast we can do. So we have to balance that. We have to accept that whether it's not fully accurate or But if it is good enough to use, then we move on. And as you know, the population changes very frequently, right? So when we start working on one country, if it ends in 2 or 3 years, probably that's not good for our project. Our church planters really demanding us to have the map soon. So that's right. So our plan is we still heavily rely on the automated process and more like a GIS experts to fix some issues and upgrade some part of the map, but not from the field. We're gonna accommodate the feedback, but that's we don't expect even that feedback has some reliable data, like how we change certain area polygon or move this village to where. Our people doesn't have that kind of knowledge. Yeah.
Sure. So another, I guess, follow-up question to that. Obviously, you want to go at a quick pace, and I understand, you want professional help, but do you have a focus area for church planters? I'm assuming 1040 window kind of thing, but can you address that? Because certainly, running this kind of an algorithm on Germany per se is a whole different animal than probably doing it in the developing world. So what is the focus or prioritization of countries at this point?
So the field needs is driven by coalition of buildings. So this network of church planters made a list of the priority countries. So we have 41 countries in our list as a priority, and these are really like a overseas mission field. So we are not hurry about creating United States map. We are not hurry about, well, we see that it's not kind of mission field. So most of them are, I would say that it may not be the, most of them are in the 1040 windows. Yes.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Okay.
So
Do you have any other
what's
questions?
the call to action here? What at the end of the day, what do you need from this community of Christians in GIS?
Right. So if you have interest, I think we have a short-term need and long-term need. So short-term need is we created village polygons, and we publishing it to the ArcGIS as a feature service. If needed, we can share actually file geodatabase, and then we identify the issues purely from the engineering perspective, like these children, villages belong to different parents that we have to fix the polygons and the metadata. It requires some ArcGIS desktop knowledge to do that. So if you want to help on this, then contact me, and then I can explain more in depth what we actually, what kind of needs we have. And we have files you can directly start working on. And long-term need is we need kind of GIS expert also having regional interest. As I said, I mean, 250 countries is hard to cover by single person and single process. So if you, for example, have interest in Middle East, right? You don't need to have local knowledges, but just enough to know these areas. And you have a passion to, look at further, how Saudi Arabia is organized, right? And then you can start to give us the feedback or you can start working on the raw, the input, the source data that, this is more reasonable to say, administrative boundaries or the village level, how we create. Yes, so if you have an interest to help and to know more about this project, please contact me. This is my contact. And also, if you contact Lauren can help to connect the coalition willing. I want to say this. It has very demanding and practical use case in the field. I'm getting last week saying that some field people say the Indonesia boundaries needs to be improved to reflect their ministry, and they're waiting it. And we said that, well, it takes time. We have to get some this kind of data, and we have to, creating this level things. But their need is very sometimes urgent. It's very practical. So I will say that when you work on this project, it will directly impact church planter in these countries. And if you work, later you're gonna get direct feedback of your work from the field. And I think that's, well, I don't know about you, but as a system guy developing this system, this kind of feedback always increases me. How my work's actually impacting the field, I do not see, but it has a practical impact on the field. So if you have a interest to help on this project, please let me know. And then maybe later time I can set up another meeting to explain more in depth our technical challenges and what we need to solve.
Sounds good. Thank you. And one suggestion from my corner. We, as a ministry, have a certain number of ArcGIS Pro and ArcMap licenses. And if anyone is interested but does not have access to ArcGIS Pro or ArcMap, please let me know. I can put my email address in the chat here, and we could maybe work something out if you're interested in helping Min and you don't have access to licensing for Pro or ArcMap.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Well, this project is getting bigger, so definitely we want to get help from the Christian GIS communities and missions like you. But also we are considering some because we have a lot of work to do, but it's still accumulating. So if you know someone also interested to work on this project full time, let me know. We are considering some the position as a full time staff too.
So, Min, if you can send that information, I don't know if it was Juliana or someone, but we actually we have a listserv, and we send that kind of thing out. If you have a job description, we can distribute that.
Okay. I will prepare then, let you know. So who I can send to you? Who I can send to? Sorry.
Actually,
why don't you send it to me, Min, Lauren?
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
Lauren,
Okay.
yeah, it's probably the right one. Sorry, Lauren.